I chose Eevee because I was not looking forward to this Pikachu constantly blabbering at me.
Oh, boy.
But, oh, man, was I in for a shot. Because that Eevee does not shut up.
Yeah. I booted it up. My wife was like, oh, turn on the music. So I want to watch a little bit. And Eevee's like, Eevee! She's like, oh, my God.
Butterscotch
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 180 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm amused at the universe.
I'm Sam, and I'm an artist.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is Coldember Freeze 2018. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything could happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, so children should not put their ears anywhere near this.
Yep.
You're going to get something stuck in the ear hole.
And then you can't use a Q-tip to get it out because according to the packaging,
you go straight to jail if you put a Q-tip in your ear.
Yep.
Also, I'm proud of Sam because I just noticed he pronounced it artiste, which means not only has he finally believed he's an artist, but he's even taken it to the
next,
artiste level.
Have I gone too far?
So, congratulations.
Very nice. Also, I want to point out, it's episode 180. That means we've come half circle, everybody. We are now, now going the opposite direction that we were when we started.
It's all downhill from here.
Well, depending on how you're measuring direction.
Radially. Yeah.
You're measuring it in degrees?
Yeah.
That's implied.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
gotcha.
We have formed a U-turn, and we are now 180.
Maybe we should just call it, this is the Pyth episode.
But isn't the way you measure the degrees isn't it from the right and then up and left?
It depends on how you turn your paper, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, math-wise, a degree is just there's an angle between two lines or two rays,
but
so they could be going anyway. Programming, it's always
it depends on the programming.
Depends on the language.
Yeah.
Game Maker, we're starting to the right.
Okay, so we're actually
we were going
backward.
Yeah, we were going to the right. 90 episodes ago, we were going up. Mm-hmm. Things were pretty good at that time. Now we're going left. I don't know what we've got.
It's all down from here.
And then it's all down. No matter for the next 180 episodes, it's just going to be down. So I hope you enjoyed the first half of Coffee with Butterscotch because it's about to get really dark.
Mm-hmm. But the great thing is that once we get around this circle, we'll be 360 no-scoping.
We get to,
Then it's just replays. Like episode 361, it's just going to be a rerun from point. From that point forward. Also, we'd like to thank our supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. We got a new person. It fell into our money pit.
They grabbed their money.
Lord Rawl says, Brother Kings of Butterlandia of the Scotch Isles, I glean much knowledge and entertainment from your discourse of the profession of game genesis and world lessons, and find myself wishing you these beverages of cafe. That's Lord Rawl said this.
Yeah,
so thank you very much.
Very lordly.
We also have recurring supporters who we would like to thank as well for just driving by once a month and just sort of peppering us with nickels.
Yep, it's great.
It hurts, but we accept.
We spend a lot of time picking them up.
All right, let's talk about life, since this is life business and working in the games industry. First,
in that order,
it's winter. One of the great things about winter is you can't step in things.
What do you mean?
You can only step on things.
The only things you can step into are liquid things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, you step in dog poop in the winter, no problem.
Because it's a rock now.
It's a rock.
It's a poop rock.
Yeah. You step in a puddle? No, you stepped on a puddle in wintertime.
Yep.
So,
but then you have the additional layer of complication, which is now that puddle, while solid, is also very slippery.
It is.
It
is. You can fall onto a puddle, but you can't fall into a puddle.
That's true.
Right.
So it's kind of it's a mixed bag, but I feel like, for those times when you aren't falling, it's very good, very beneficial.
I had the other day, I probably didn't even have to lock my car door because it was frozen shut. So there's another benefit.
You can't step in things, and you also can't get into things because everything is frozen.
Actually, I think if someone would have seen me in the parking lot, they would have thought I was breaking into my own car because I was like slamming my body against. You ever have that? I thought I was going to rip the door handle off.
Yeah, I always have that. You can't get it open, and you start pulling the handle, and you feel the handle because normally the handle isn't supposed to give because the door is on it. The door is supposed to open when you start to feel the handle bending a little bit. So
I was doing one of those shoulder into it situations.
Did you try pouring some boiling water over your car?
No.
Like, or throw some hot coffee on it.
You don't just carry boiling water around?
I don't really have like quick access.
Well, so that's probably, I
don't have one of those bidets.
This is winter now, so now you need to have a thermos of hot water for melting your car. You also need to have another thermos full of cat litter so that if your car gets stuck, you can pour.
You can attract
I don't know,
cats
on the tires. I'm not sure how that works.
I think you attract the cats, like so.
And then
you sort of lasso them up like an Iditarod situation, attach them to the car, get them to pull you out.
You need a lot of cats because they have claws, which is how they can get trapped.
Exactly.
That's where
they're way better than dogs.
Yep.
Yeah, I was wondering about that litter thing, but now
it makes a lot of sense.
Clear.
Adam, you've been doing physical therapy. Let's talk about
what's that about.
What's that about?
So I started physical therapy on Wednesday because I got a bum shoulder, but I don't really. The details don't really matter.
It just keeps crashing on people's couches. And,
basically.
Like mooching.
But there was an interesting thing I just realized as I was doing, because there's this huge problem in medicine called patient compliance, which every listener knows about because you're part of the problem.
Yep.
Just like I am, just like we all are.
If you've ever been a patient, you are a part of the problem.
Exactly. Which is that a doctor prescribes you something and you then don't even do it.
That's the short of it. You came to me and paid me too much money because of how the healthcare system works. And here's exactly what you need to do. Yep. Patients are like, I'm going to do maybe 20% of that.
Yeah, at best.
Yeah. If you're lucky, doctor.
If you're lucky. And when it comes to drugs, like people at least, because drugs are easy to take, you just throw them in your mouth, that's fine. Mm-hmm. So people are still terribly non-compliant.
Correct.
But at least it's easy. So people are not too bad. But when it comes to physical therapy, people don't do shit because now they got to exercise, right? And
which they're already don't do.
Which they're already not doing, which is why they have to go to physical therapy in the first place, probably. Which is why I had to go, it turns out.
So, of course, if they did it, it would be a double benefit because they'd be getting exercise, which they need anyways, and they don't have.
But I was thinking about the framing then, because like in the framing, so I went to physical therapy. She was like shaking my shoulders, and she was like in the joint, and she was like, "You got some real loose fucking joints.
You're all loosey goosey."
And she said that can be a good thing, and I now have to say what she should have said because she wouldn't just come out and say it, which was. That could be a good thing if you had strong muscles in your shoulder.
Mm-hmm. If you weren't a weak baby.
Exactly. But instead, she very carefully danced around, like implying anything about how fucking weak my muscles are.
She didn't want you to feel like a weak baby.
Right. But what I needed to know was that the reason for my physical pain was because of how weak I have decided to become.
Yeah.
Because that's a personal decision.
That's true.
You know?
That's not, you didn't just happen to become weak.
No. It was because and it is a little, and it's not quite that, because like I still have worked out a little bit. I'm not as weak as I could be. It's that there are also certain muscles that I don't use normally, and I don't ever use when I'm working out, right? And those are the ones in particular that basically don't even exist. So it doesn't even have to be offensive, this fact that I've got weak ass muscles.
It's just a fact.
It's just a fact
about the universe.
But by not telling me, and so I realized it kind of after the fact, after I was like thinking about it, I was like, why am I like this? You know, why do I have these loose fucking joints? that are causing this pain? And then I was like, oh, well, it's because I've got weak ass muscles, you know? It's as simple as that.
Well,
but that though, because now this is the whole, like, the framing now is important when it comes to compliance, right? Because if you just say, hey, you need to do this because you'll feel better in 6 weeks or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, okay, but like, well, why? And like, it sucks to do it and whatever.
She said, listen, you need to go get some gains and get swole.
Because you're weak as fuck.
Yeah. Right? And your weakness is literally crippling your body.
Weakness is crippling your body. Then I'd be like, oh shit. Like,
which actually though,
here's like, that's the difference between a habitual change. I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to actually like change how I approach my life versus just saying, okay, if I just do this
for 6 weeks,
if I bear through this for 6 weeks, then I'll be healed. Right.
Well, and actually having weaker muscles causes a lot of problems generally. Because also weightlifting, it strengthens your muscles, which then strengthens the areas around your joints, which then it helps with joint pain and stuff. But also it improves your bone density. Yeah. So if you have various like, as people get older, they'll like fall and break something that they otherwise normally wouldn't have broken when they were younger. But you can help to push that kind of stuff off by lifting weights.
Another thing you can do, this is something I vaguely remember from like 100 years ago, so it could be completely wrong. Which is that
leeches.
Some NASA study, leeches probably, but there's some NASA study we were trying to figure out how to increase bone density in astronauts, right? And they're doing all these different things, and one of the things that they, if I remember correctly, discovered was that if you just vibrated a person, like so
you just shake them,
you put them like a vibrating plate or like something, right? Then that actually increases bone density, like to the same degree that all kinds of physical activity.
So you're saying that those ab belts that like vibrate the shit out of your whole body are actually doing something.
I think those actually tase you. I think
constant tasing.
It's just like 6 tasers that you stick.
It's the reason that when you look at those, because they only show you the front part of that belt, but if
the inside is.
But if you see the back is actually 2 guns.
Yeah, and then there's barbs on the front.
Yeah, and it shoots around and it gets caught in this little loop thing that then flings them back right into your
I always
stomach.
thought that looked incredible, and I realized in retrospect it was probably so they always put it on just a person with rippling abs.
Yeah,
and
it'd probably be really gross on anybody.
Yeah, well, at first you're thinking like, oh yeah, they got that way because they used this.
Yeah,
this tase belt.
Right? So there's a couple hilarious things about this. One is in the commercial, the abs, like you see it, it's like, and it's like flexing rhythmically, Yeah. And really, it's probably just the person flexing. Like it's probably the thing isn't actually doing anything. But then it's even more hilarious when you realize if this machine worked, then what it is doing is literally just rhythmically flexing your abs, which you can already do by yourself.
Yeah, but now you don't have to have the willpower.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do it.
And everything about compliance is about getting around the willpower problem.
Yeah. Well, so then this compliance thing is another problem too, because no doctor actually knows whether or not the thing that they have told their patient to do has worked.
Well, because they don't know if you did it.
They can generally guess that you did not do it.
Yeah.
Which makes it a much really safer guess.
A lot of why we don't know if most kinds of modern medicine work.
I remember I had a conversation with a doctor.
Is because no doctors can ever actually find out if you did what they asked.
Yeah, I remember once I had a conversation with a doctor about some problem, and I was like, "So is this this is a long-term thing? Does this work?" And he's like, "Well, normally when I do this, I never see those people again." So
yeah,
right.
And I'm like, "Are they dead?" either it worked again, or they died, or something in between.
Yeah,
so it just catapults them into the void. That's what it is.
Yeah,
and most things do resolve themselves. So if somebody comes to the doctor for some sort of a grievance, right? Chances are they won't come back, even if the solution didn't do anything at all.
Because they're like, well, I guess that didn't do anything. I'm not going back there.
Yeah, or I guess it did, but it actually didn't do anything at all.
You know what's crazy about your shoulder problem is that I had the same problem when I was cheerleading.
Yeah.
So after about 2 years of cheerleading, because we would practice for 6 hours a week, and my shoulders would just hurt like hell. And so I went to the doctor because I was like, clearly I got a problem. Did some x-rays, and they're like, nothing's wrong in there. But your joints are super loose.
Yep. We got loose fucking joints.
And they were like, who in your family has loose joints? And I was like, our mom has she could double joint her fingers. Yeah. She's like popping things off, it's like, and
she just takes her arm off.
She just like put it back in, just whatever. Yeah. And so
puts it in the closet.
And so the nice thing about the loose joints is that you don't get some of the mobility injuries that other people get during like running or whatever else. Because your joints just kind of slip all over the place and don't really care.
And you can't dislocate it because it already is.
It's dislocated all the time.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. So like my right shoulder, they're like, your right shoulder is just kind of like a third out.
Yeah.
By default. And he said, you literally have to build muscle to lock it in place.
Right, yeah, you can't just have the ordinary amount of shoulder muscle.
Yeah, right. So yeah,
you need to be Dwayne Johnson.
And that's the frame that I needed, right? Because it's not because I am also weak, right? But it's not actually that. It's that I need to be a lot stronger than normal in that specific part of my body because I have a weird anatomical problem, which is I got loose fucking joints.
But then you don't want to just do that because then you'll be like
weird, like puff balls like poking out of your
shoulder. You'll be like weird shoulder pad guy.
Yeah.
All he does is go to the gym and just do 3 hours of shoulder.
A lot of video games. And I know that the level of power that you have is directly correlated to how big your shoulders are.
That's true.
So.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's shoulder pads.
Well, yeah, but they'll look like shoulder pads.
That's true. If you just put something on them, shoulder pads.
That's true. Power level is always correlated to shoulder size. So I guess, you could just neglect everything else. That's probably fine.
Yep.
All right, let's get on to some studio news. I was on a podcast this past weekend. It's called the Object Podcast, but it's spelled OBJ_podcast because it's a game maker podcast, and that's the syntax that a lot of people use for creating objects in Game Maker. OBJ_.
So I assume this is a very nitty gritty.
It was a great conversation. Kind of bounced around. There were some nuts and bolts things about how to do some stuff in Game Maker, but we didn't dig into complaints about optimization or any kind of really deep in the weeds stuff. It was more just conceptual.
But I guess
stuff.
for those of our listeners who feel like that's something that is missing from their lives in this podcast, because we don't go into a lot of technical detail in anything.
Yeah,
Game Maker and so on.
Yeah, that's a good podcast for that. So if you want to catch that, it does come out semi-sporadically, but on a 1 to 2 week schedule. So I'm not totally sure when this one will be out, but maybe by this time this one comes out. And then otherwise, we're jamming on Levelhead super hard.
Yeah.
So Sam has been building levels for the campaign,
Mm-hmm.
which there will be a campaign, as we've mentioned.
Many times.
So let's talk about that experience.
Yeah. So the big question is sort of one of what the mechanics of Levelhead and the play of Levelhead suggests about how you should be building levels. So in a game like Mario, for example, the platforming is actually not super responsive. It's not super fast, right? And on top of that, when you die, it takes a long time before you come back to life. So what those two things taken in tandem suggests is that you should build levels in such a way that players can enjoy or like can spend quite a bit of time in the same level, and then also that they sort of expose the player to a bunch of different kind of tricks and stuff like that. Because
So you want to have like secrets people can find. You want to have shortcuts people can figure out if they're crafty, so that they feel smart.
Because the player actually doesn't move super fast through the space, right? And what that means
not the first time, especially.
Yeah. And so you can make these longer levels that are maybe even more, so like feel more like a narrative or whatever else. And then on the flip side, you look at something like Super Meat Boy, which respawn time is basically instant, and you are expected to die a lot, and it's extremely like sort of turbo responsiveness in terms of the platforming. The level design there tends to be both. It's a sort of a combination of really quick when you're learning skills, and then as in like literally 3 to 5 second long levels where you do a thing to learn a skill and then you move on to the next.
I remember
level.
the first level in Super Meat Boy, you just like leap,
yeah,
real far because of course like it's very floaty as a platformer. But in retrospect, I know when you started designing your levels, I played the first one. I was like, this seems way too fast. But I was thinking back to the Super Meat Boy, and I was like, oh yeah, that first level you literally just leap, and then you're at the end of the.
It's one jump.
Yeah,
because
it takes under a second.
Yep.
Yeah, and so because the basic idea with level design, especially in the context of the campaign, the job of the campaign is to first actually teach all of the platforming mechanics that the character has at their disposal.
Yeah, because we don't have the Mario Maker advantage, which is they had 20 years of Mario games, actually 30, I guess, years of Mario games to pull from, where people already knew what a shell it was and a mushroom and a
and how to navigate, how to jump on shells, how to throw stuff.
Yeah, so and imagine if you had never been exposed to that franchise and you went into Mario Maker and like tried to figure out what all those things do.
Yeah, because basically
like you just see a turtle, you're like, okay,
what
is
it's
just an enemy, and then you would jump on it and be like, what the fuck, it left a shell behind.
Right.
Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you would never expect in a million years.
And in the context of like a workshop, that's sort of is basically the completely wrong place to try to learn these things because of the loop. So for example,
you're not being shown the things by a designer to learn them. You're just like handed the behind the scenes mechanism.
So you can't get any sort of tips and tricks on how to use them in some way.
So that's what the campaign is for.
So this first set of levels is really designed to just try to get people to learn all the skills that we need, such that if they, for example, go online, God forbid they pull down a level, from the community, because they wouldn't be prepared if we didn't actually do something like this robust campaign in the first place. And so it was really interesting putting it all together. And all told, the first series of levels that really basically teaches like the whole suite of skills you need, including the really advanced ones, ends up being about 12 levels total, with like a little nice capstone thing on the end of it. And that might change. It might be 1 or 2 more or less, depending on what happens as we go forward. But the really funny thing was when I tested it on Adam, because I'd already refined it a few times. And of course, Adam's played the game a bit, but not a ton, maybe for like a couple hours or something.
Probably a total of like 4 hours.
Yeah. So he knows how it works, basically.
This is actually part of our design process, is we keep Adam away from the game quite a bit, so that we have a pair of fresh eyes to show like big incremental changes to.
And so
he's doing web programming and stuff.
Yeah, so I got to bring Adam on to watch it. But the thing is, he's also been playing only levels from the hub, which is the online component of it. So levels that all of us have built. In
particular, there were levels mostly that Seth had built to test
certain mechanics
in the game, and so they were like really weird. And then Seth also sort of tends towards the sadist kind of level design.
Seth makes really hard levels, and so most of the levels that Adam has played have been ones that are designed to sort of trick or just be like so difficult that you almost have to have a survivor's approach to it, where GR18 can carry things. That's like part of the core of the game. And so if there's a thing to carry in one of those levels, you should just keep it with you at all times.
Assume that if I don't have this, some horrifying thing is going to happen.
But you can only hold one thing at a time. So now it becomes this whole like juggling problem.
Things forward. So it was very funny watching Adam, because over the first like 6 levels, which again like they bounce between maybe like 5 seconds all the way up to like a minute, those first couple of just sort of playing around. And Adam was like kind of poking around in the whole space, like trying to figure out, like, is something going to murder me? Like, really,
I also want to say,
checking every hole, like everything was just hysterical.
Because we have false terrain in the game, so you can put down terrain that you can like walk through it, and once you go inside of it, then it reveals what's inside. And so, in some of these published levels that we made in the past, we would have levels where like it once you really explore the level, you'll find that there's some unbelievably impossible thing that seems like it's just no way to get past it. But then if you just like walk the other direction through a hill, it's like, oh yeah, there's a barrel in there that just launches you to the end and you're in. Right. So we had all these kind of like troll levels that if you really poked around and explored it, then you would just be able to get past everything.
The problem with that, the problem with that is that you end up with a situation where the player does not trust the designer anymore. Yeah. And so the designer then can't actually use most of your design tools, which is things like, for example, if I put a trail of coins down, you know that I'm telling you, like, follow this trail. And I can even make it so that you go.
And this is true when you play a Mario game or anything else, right? You know that there's the designer put that there to get you to do something.
Every block should be placed like for a very particular reason, and it's always to guide the player, not usually to murder the player, which is a very different approach.
And it might be to like add some tricks a little bit, but it's never to like to do something that feels unfair or anything like that.
And so it was very funny watching Adam, because basically he sort of started off with this sort of like, abused mindset coming in, like, I can't figure this, like, is this okay? I'm taking everything with me. And then by like the 10th level or so was relaxed enough that was actually, following the directions that I had sort of been implicitly laying down, using the backdrops and coins, everything else, and sort of gotten into it. And then afterwards he's like, this is really different when you play it with someone who designed it on purpose.
Yeah. Like, I think it's a really interesting problem.
The intention of the design is to teach, correct? Which means you have to develop trust. Yeah.
But that's actually true with any platformer, because it's to teach anyway, right? But it's actually to teach how to like sort of assemble cues in the environment to what you're then supposed to do, so that you can beat the level and so on. So that when you play games like Super Mario, you end up having sort of this eventually completely intuitive understanding of what you're seeing, so that the instant you see something, you kind of
know what to do.
Your thumbs just do the right thing to get you where you need to go. Yeah, and that will not be true in public levels.
No, which is why we need this campaign.
Well, but I think it adds actually an interesting layer of complexity to the overall design of this thing, which is that the moment our players go into the level hub, the way that they'll play the campaign afterwards is now going to be the way that I was playing it, right? Which is very defensively and concerned about all this kind of stuff. And so we have to figure out, like, what does that mean?
They might not, though, because once they get used to the way the campaign levels are constructed, and they'll be able to feel the difference between the two.
True, I hope so.
So they may.
But that's only true if we keep them in the campaign for a while before even exposing them to the level hub at all, right? Because the moment we throw them in there, their whole framing of this game has necessarily changed.
Yeah, and that's actually something that we believe that we have to do, which is we're not going to let you build levels until you've reached a certain point in the campaign, because you will have like beaten enough levels that we're confident that you know how a lot of the mechanics work, that you've seen what we believe are a bunch of well-crafted levels that are well-paced and all that stuff. Just to kind of like, we don't want somebody to just boot up the game, immediately go into the workshop and just start publishing crap.
Nonsense,
Right. And so, and on the flip side, we also don't want somebody to open up the game to immediately go to the online stuff and start playing these unbelievably impossible troll levels.
Yeah, because you need to know how to be. You already need to be good at the game before you go wade into that, right? And we've had this ongoing discussion since the very beginning of just like where that line should be of how much campaign that we use to teach people before we let them start playing that content. And I think after that experience, I'm leaning even more heavily towards basically like as much of the campaign as we can
chunk
have the
player
player
you basically treat it
first.
like two games, or essentially like the online stuff is the elder game.
Exactly.
That's so I think
and we may not have to introduce it at like the very end of the campaign, but it's gonna need to be like a
decent chunk,
a deep ways.
Well, the nice thing is because of the structure. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of levels in the campaign, just sort of by default. So like those 12 levels introduce the core mechanics of the game, and then the first like 10 items. Including like the ground as far as sort of how our spreadsheet works. Yeah. And so I think I'm up to like 14 or 16 levels now, and I'm only on what we've sort of spec'd out as like the second tier of stuff that we're going to be introducing. And so of like 10. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of things.
Yeah. But there's another, it's just interesting, right? Because as you're introducing this content, what you were discovering was that you were introducing stuff kind of a lot slower than you thought you would, right? Because of just the degree to which you need to really teach and make things feel good.
My initial pass was 6 levels.
Out. Right.
And then it ended up doubling because I realized that I wasn't the total number of skills that were required to actually just play the game effectively were way more than I
anticipated. Well, a lot of them are what you call a compound skill.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for example, there's a thing you can do, which is you can pick up the package, which that's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
You can then throw the package onto a row of spikes, which that's a skill of like aiming the package, right? And also knowing that you can put it onto spikes. Then you need to jump and land accurately on it, which is another thing. And then you need to jump off the package while grappling downward and moving to the right.
Yeah.
So that's a super advanced skill. Yeah. So that way you can like jump off the package while also picking it up.
So the interesting one is because we've been playing the game for so long, it just didn't seem like it was a problem.
That's just one move.
And so
the whole like kicking the package onto spikes, jumping off it, while picking up, that's just one thing that you do.
And so basically what this allows you to do is you can reach areas that are kind of inaccessible. You can even chain this together. So you can make a situation where you just have like a long row of spikes, for example. And then maybe there's something good at the other end of it. Mm-hmm. And players will pick up that that's probably what the case is, right? After you teach them this sort of thing. And then they can try to do this like a repeated package jump, as we call it, to not be touching the spikes. So this ended up being like one of the hardest ones to teach because it's actually these like 6 different skills layered on.
But that also became, because it was such a neat, fun trick, that became in the levels that we were playing previously. Mm-hmm. That was like just a core mechanic that was always used.
Once you know how to do
it was actually when I first picked it up, and try to do that. But after like Sam said that already made a lot of the game, like done a whole bunch of stuff, and I picked it up and tried to do this thing, right? And I was like, how the fuck? Like I couldn't figure it out actually, like at all. And I was trying to figure out how to do it. You
didn't have the muscle memory for it.
I didn't have the muscle memory for it. I had, and both Sam and Seth were just like, it's really easy. You just like hold down and like you just do it.
You just press A, and hold down, press X with the other part of your thumb while holding down, and just move
and get the timing perfect. Yeah. That's it, you know. And
it's like a Street Fighter combo. Right. How hard could it be?
and because we didn't have a campaign to teach or anything, then what I ended up doing is because I couldn't get past these parts of these levels that Sam and Seth made, is
you built your own campaign
built
level,
I built my own little mini level in the editor that just let me experiment and like try that thing over and over and over again. Because I needed a context in which I could actually go learn it.
So the best part though is that I took this. I've been taking this home to my wife to test it on her because she doesn't play platforming games basically at all.
She likes to play low stress games.
Yeah, because she's got a pretty high gain response to stress, and so like battling is just not usually a thing. And
she's all about like roller coaster tycoon,
building stuff, like having a good time, you know, not being stressed out. And so I had taken the initial set and the initial set made it so that she couldn't get past like the 3rd level of those first 6 that I'd made because of the package jump.
Yep.
Then I busted out into the 12, took that home, and she could almost get past part of it, like 6 levels or so. But again, the package jump was a problem.
Yeah.
Redid that, so added a whole tutorial level basically for that. And then so on Friday or on Saturday morning, we sat down and played it together. And yeah, she was able to, because the structure of this exact level that teaches this really hard technique is such that you can just die repeatedly as you're sort of putting each piece of the skill onto the stack that makes this big advanced skill. And so within like 3 or 4 minutes, she now has the ability to do it. And she's like, oh, I see. She's like, it's one of those things that you can't think about.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you cannot think about it.
You just have to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then it just happens.
You need to be able to learn it and practice it in a low stress environment. So as I think part of it too is we were trying to teach it on a level where there were so many things that could go wrong that were unrelated to whether you did the move. Like enemies could come in and kill you. You could like slip and land on spikes and all this crap, when really none of those things are needed for you to learn this move.
Man, so bringing this back to the whole like separation of the campaign and the level hub, then now there's this interesting problem where even if we introduce a whole bunch of mechanics, like core mechanics like this one, you know, and say we introduce a power up, so like the Eye of Gorbel or whatever, so the little ninja guy. So we introduced that, and they were like, okay, cool. Like we've given the player a lot of stuff now. Like let's give them all of the stuff they've seen so they can go actually play with it in the editor, right? But now they still don't know what all the other stuff is. And as soon as they can go in the editor, they can also go into Level Hub. And now in the Level Hub, they're going to see all the other stuff that other players have unlocked that we haven't taught them how to interact with yet. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so now their first introduction to all of that other content is going to be by other people, not by us.
Who don't have their interests in mind.
Who do not
try to teach them.
Exactly. Yeah. And which to me, like all collectively means that the campaign actually should have 2 parts. The campaign should have a sort of tutorial is the wrong word, but like the first part of the campaign is all about teaching all the content. Like that's its whole thing.
rapidly as
But
possible.
it's going to take a long time still. Like it's going to take hours and hours. But that's the
50
thing.
to 100 levels
Right.
Yeah.
minimum if we really like
Right.
I've
go
been like
fast.
now
And
that,
so
now
we
that
give
people have
people
the skills, I
basically-
found I can pack in like 2 or 3 things into one level
Right.
essentially.
So we give people basically all the content over, several hours of gameplay through the campaign. And then at that point where they've seen everything that has like a real important functional difference, right? And they've like learned all the skills that are obviously different and so on. They've seen all the power up to doing all that stuff. There could still be some stuff left.
Yeah.
That is a little bit more cosmetic or a little bit more of a minor shift or whatever on a mechanic they already understand that doesn't then need to be taught necessarily in the context that we control. But so that at that point, we now get to release them into the wild and see what happens, right? Where we can then continue the campaign from there, where then the campaign is just all about us continuing to make really
Ratchet
good
the
levels and
difficulty,
ratcheting the difficulty and demonstrating different ways of making levels and thinking about it so that you still get a lot out of continuing. But now you get to feel like you can go take all the stuff you learned and make levels and play other people's stuff.
Yeah, we got a lot of figuring out to do.
Yeah.
well, and there's
It's a real
I think
thing.
there's the final problem, which is the marketing problem.
Yes.
Which is of course like one of the things people are going to be most excited about is building and sharing levels.
Right.
But there's like a miswanting thing, which is
Yeah, it's not in their best interest to do it immediately.
yeah, they would have a pretty bad time if all we did was like, hey, here's 120 different things you can use to build with.
Well, in
you have no
fact-
idea what any of them are.
And
Have
all the
fun.
levels they would try to play would also suck.
Right.
In fact, most of the level editors that we've seen launched, level editing games that we've seen launched that were predicated on that in the past year or so, as we've been working on level head and sort of keeping an eye out, none of them have a big campaign. And
They usually have unlocking mechanisms. And even Mario Maker has this, where like over time you unlock new things to put into
but they don't have a
editor.
campaign that you actually play through.
Right.
And so the result then is that players, the only way to understand what the mechanics are they're either to experience them via sadistic levels they find online or to sort of try to play with them in the
I have an idea.
What?
I have an idea. Okay. As people are working through the campaign, we know sort of like what their general level of progress is, right? Which means we can put sort of like a score on that.
Yeah, we could
It's
tie
like-
that to the levels they publish.
Exactly. So that when they go to look at levels, we only show them levels made by people who
Who've
are
progressed
at
the same- yeah,
their
yeah.
level in the campaign or
let's do it.
earlier.
Done.
Boom. We just designed.
Nice work.
Great work, team. All right. Let's get on to industry news.
What happened?
All right. So 2 things happened. One is Pokemon Let's Go is still crushing it.
Mhm.
Sam got it.
Yeah, I played it for about 6 hours of the weekend.
No, wait, Pokemon Go or Pokemon
Let's Go.
Pokemon Let's Go.
And-
Eevee and Pikachu.
I got Eevee, of course, because
Yeah,
So which one did you get?
Also Eevee.
Because Eevee can turn into like 9 different things.
Well,
Why would you
also,
want-
I have to say, like,
Pikachu can turn into a bigger Pikachu though.
yeah,
which is
well,
pretty-
kind of, it's a little more, it's just more like a rotund Pikachu
Sure, well, he's bigger.
with
I
a
mean,
longer tail.
He's bigger width-wise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, I mean,
Girth.
I chose Eevee because I was not looking forward to this Pikachu constantly blabbering at me.
Yes.
Oh boy.
But, oh man, was I in for a
Yeah.
shot. Because that Eevee does not shut up.
Yeah, I booted it up. My wife was like, "Oh, turn on the music so I want to watch a little bit." And
Oh,
so,
God,
and
it's-
Evie's like, "Eevee!" She's like, "Oh my god, stop!" So yeah, that's a thing. They are screaming all
They
the
are
time.
very vocal.
They're very vocal. But
I mean,
guess
that's a lot like my cat.
Yeah, Adam's
so,
got a cat
yeah,
like
that's
that.
fair.
pretty standard.
I'm used to that.
But yeah, so I played it quite a bit, and based on our discussion last week, we talked about Pokemon Let's Go and some of the potential weirdness of having this what is essentially a mixture of Pokemon Go and the core gameplay. But I found it I actually very much enjoyed it after it took about 3 hours before I was like, okay,
It's weird, but I think it works.
I think it works, but I think there's enough problems with it. There are enough problems with it mechanically.
Oh yeah, it's not perfect.
That make it just sometimes real annoying. So the actual the capturing mechanic, because you have to use the damn switch to point at stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have to actually
It
point,
uses the gyros.
tilt it around.
yeah.
And then I was trying to catch an Onyx, which is like this huge snake rock thing. It's
Did
like
you have
40
to like?
feet
Did you
tall.
have to like look up?
Yeah, you have to look up to do it. But then also, you
That is
have
kind of
no-
cool though.
It is cool, but you have no depth perception at that point because now the ground's gone. And so, and
Yeah.
you're arcing this, the ball
Right.
arcs.
What, like you had to hit it in the head or something?
You have
Is
to
that-
try to hit it in like a certain zone to
Okay.
catch it, and then that zone shrinks. And if you get it when the zone's super small, then you get like an excellent throw, which
Yeah.
increases likelihood to catch it. And so,
So the riskier you make your throw,
Yeah.
if you do make it, then you get a boost.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I threw like probably 15 balls at this freaking
Just
Onyx,
kept
and
missing?
I just couldn't get the damn thing in the right spot. And so, and this is basically like a few of the a few of the Pokemon that I was starting to catch are like they're jumping around, they're kind of like gigantic, or they do stuff where basically you have to tilt the damn switch all over the place, and it just doesn't actually work that well. Like it's just not, honestly, it's just not mechanically tight enough.
Well, what you got to do is when they're jumping around and stuff, you gotta give them berries to calm them down.
But I don't have enough berries for that. I'm saving my berries, because like
it's just like rejuvenation potions in Diablo 2. You're like,
never use them.
I know I'm gonna need these, so I'm never gonna use them.
Yeah,
then
I know there's legendary,
or it's just ammo and an FPS.
It is
like playing Half-Life forever ago. I would always end the game with infinite ammo.
Yeah, I would
never use it.
Yeah, I always just use that bee gun that just regenerates constant alien bees.
And just keep accumulating.
And I'm like, I know this isn't ideal, but I might need my ammo. And then I end up fighting the end boss with a bee gun. So I'm like, I don't know if there's another boss after this.
Yeah, or in Fallout with the what's the little mini nukes?
The fat man.
Yeah, the fat
man, isn't it?
The gun is called like the fat. I can't remember what it is, but then it throws the mini nukes, right?
Yeah.
And you collect and mini nukes are super scarce. There's like a dozen of them or something. And so in Fallout 3, I remember looking up a guide even to try to find all of them, and I literally never used one.
Yeah,
I literally never used one.
And you come up
just because there were only 12,
and then you come across a scenario where there's like 19 people shooting at you, and you know that the designers were like, "This is where you would use the mini nuke," but instead you're like, "I don't know. What if I come across 20 guys?"
Exactly. Yeah. How often will this happen? Will this happen a dozen times? Because
this kind of goes to their point though, which is that because you're chucking these Pokeballs at these Pokemon constantly, right? And so the mechanics are just wonky enough that you can't really effectively feel like you got to hold on how you're throwing these damn balls at these things, right? Like it's
pretty loose.
It's pretty loose and it doesn't quite work. But then it's like ammo, like the balls run out after time. Yeah. And you basically have infinite of the shitty regular, red and white Pokeball, but you have to buy the other ones.
Catch anything with them anyways.
Yeah, you have to buy the Great Balls, Ultra Balls, all the things that actually make it possible to catch a lot of these more hardcore things. And so, I went and bought like 20 balls before going to this cave. And then I fight this Onyx, and I can't donk the thing effectively enough with this ball. So I burn like 12 Great Balls on this thing, which is like $1 billion in this game.
Yeah.
And the previous Pokemon games, you just have infinite money. Yeah. And you never have to worry about it.
Because there's nothing to buy.
But now I'm like, oh God. And then it was just, so basically I think if that system was actually tighter, I think it'd be really fun.
What they need is essentially a mini nuke version of a Pokeball that you can just like hit the ground anywhere, and the splash damage will absorb the Pokeball.
Sort of like a Ghostbusters ghost trap.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah, you just slide it on the ground. You're like, I don't care where this goes, and it just sucks the Pokemon in there.
The other thing I found interesting though is that and I can't remember if this is the case in the first version of the game, but the battles seemed very samey this time around. So, for example, like you're in a particular area and there'll be like one or two types of trainer that hang out in that area, which have one or two types of Pokemon. And as the game goes on, they keep on stringing together more and more of these trainers before you get to the next sort of safe zone. And so you might do like 15 or 20 battles in a row with people who each have one or two of these Pokemon. And the end result, though, is that you see the same one. You see the same Pokemon, just like everyone has the same kit.
I don't remember feeling like that.
I don't remember feeling like that. And it ends up just being like I was in the Spirit Tower thing in Lavender Town, and it's just fighting.
Well, I think maybe part of it is that in the old game, you also mixed those battles up with wild
random
battles,
encounters, right?
True, yeah, because it was rare that you would actually battle people back to back at all.
Yeah. You'd always be having to fight a Zubat generally in between.
Yeah. If you want to fight 3 hikers, be ready to be attacked by 39 Zubats in between, because that's your life now.
So it's there, and that ends up sort of to me it ends up causing a bit of a pacing problem where like basically because I was able to just run between these battles with no interruption because you can just dodge if you just walk around Pokemon instead of having to deal with them. Which previously I was like, I hate Zubat. I never want to have to deal with Zubat. Now I'm like, I think Zubat was the savior that we all.
It was the buffer in between.
It was the pacing buffer, you know? By the time you get to a trainer, you're like, thank God.
Well, this is where we talk about in the past about this, this problem of convenience and how having things that kind of suck makes the good things even more good. You know, if everything is brought up to even, then it's kind of a bland thing. But I think it's still good. It's still a good game. It's just
I've been enjoying it a lot. It's very different, and I think I'm kind of.
Have you done a co-opted it? Because I'm curious what co-op feels like.
Apparently, you could just 2v1 things.
Yeah.
In the battles, if somebody else has a Joy-Con, then you just bring out 2 of your Pokemon and just beat the shit out of the other person's one Pokemon.
Which I feel like it's
kind of just cheating, really.
But also much more likely how it would like if you run around with 6 of them, I would just have all 6 of my Pokemon. I would just
there's no rational reason why you wouldn't just summon all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
why?
maybe they're hard to control or something. So you just have to have like the
That's
one.
true.
Could be. All right. Well, we have one more industry thing. We have to hit it quick because I'm gonna get on some questions. Fallout 76. Things are going.
Things have
interestingly.
continued to
I don't
happen.
know what this is like. This is the winter of giant studios just flying off the rails.
What the hell they're doing?
So
Yeah.
Fallout 76, the game has been getting generally quite unfavorable
I
response.
think it's fair to say it's been universally panned. Is that
The
Yes,
content has been criticized for being non-existent in the sense that they removed story, they removed characters, they removed dialogue, like all the things that people liked about the previous Fallout games. They just got rid of that, and they kept the thing that admittedly is not necessarily the selling point, which is that the game takes place in a barren, lifeless wasteland.
yes.
That's not really like what makes Fallout. It's more of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So the multiplayer, then also people are talking about how like it's mostly just revolves around like doing these fetch quests, and you don't really need to actually do anything with anybody else anyways. So it just kind of happens in multiplayer. So
This is all bad
so
already.
so the design people are not super pumped about, but then apparently it's so buggy that people also can hardly even play that.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, there's been this huge fiasco with what has happened. So for starters, people have been trying to get refunds.
Yeah.
They are not able to get refunds. I think that's sold directly from Bethesda,
Yes.
right? Like not through Steam or anything like that. So if somebody wants a refund, they got to like contact Bethesda and be like, can I have a refund? And Bethesda's just like, no. Too bad. You agreed to the EULA or whatever. So people are upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then even worse is what happened with people who pre-ordered the collector's edition. So there was a big advertisement for if you pre-order the $200 collector's edition, you get this cool ass helmet.
Mhm.
You get this cool like military styled nylon bag with like a cool logo on the side.
You get a map or a
canvas
map
bag.
thing.
Canvas bag. And you get like some other cool stuff. It's a really great package of goodies. And so a lot of people sprung the $200 to get this thing.
And $200 is a lot. That's what you would think you would spend on high end goodies, and that's what it looked like the goodies were.
Yes, because they had pictures of the goodies.
Yes.
And they
look good.
They looked good. So people got their collector's editions, and it turned out that there was no canvas bag, and instead it was this super, super cheap ass, wrinkly, almost
nylon,
disposable nylon bag.
like a trash bag.
Yeah.
With a logo.
Like slightly above a trash bag with like a plastic logo kind of like glued to the taped to the side of it, you know? And so people were like, what the hell? And so people went to look at things like on Amazon or any other places where they were still selling the collector's edition. And sure enough, they're still showing pictures of this canvas bag. And so people thought maybe there was a mistake or something. So they talked to customer service, and customer service is just like, oh no, the thing is, it turned out the canvas bag was too expensive. So we just swapped it for this nylon bag. And so people are like, are you going to do anything about this? And they're like, no. And so literally they just said, no, we don't plan on doing anything about this. Big uproar. People got pissed off. And so the response by Bethesda was to give everybody $5 worth of in-game currency for them to buy like something from the in-game store.
Yeah. Relative to their $200.
Right. The problem is $5 is not really enough to actually get anything from the in-game store. So for people to actually use that currency, they'd have to spend more money. And so
Well, I saw a further wrinkle here, which is that one of the influencers posted the bag that they got.
yes,
Which is
this is the final
super
bit.
fucking rad.
So they actually had custom made canvas. It was a different bag, but it was still a super nice canvas bag that Bethesda gave to a bunch of YouTubers and Twitch streamers who didn't pay for it. Like they were just given it, to promote the game.
But that sort of makes it so that an influencer would accidentally trick their own viewership into
Thinking that
getting
this was
thing.
similar. Yeah. So it's just been oh God. Like
I think the crazy thing is the response of being like, look, I know we sent out this bag that was literally not what you purchased.
like,
Kind of just like how the game that you bought
we
is also
lied.
probably not what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is the bag has become a metaphor for the game, right? Which is like people paid a ton of money to get this thing as advertised, and they were just handed this piece of crap that doesn't do what it.
But then on top of that, giving people $5. So we talked about this problem before, which is that if you don't pay someone to do something, it has a different kind of value than if you do, right? So like if you have a friend over, for example, and you're like, oh, well, we'll just have some beers and like move some stuff, or weed the garden or whatever. That's one thing. But if you're like, hey, why don't you come over? And if I paid you the equivalent of those beers, it was like, I'll give you $7.
Mm-hmm.
We now have a transactional relationship, and it's bad because it's actually worth $7. And in fact, by putting money into the equation, money is now the point of the equation.
And they've underpaid.
And you have severely underpaid. And so this is exactly what happened with this, where instead of being like, oh, like, you know, we're so sorry we fucked this up. Like, here's a bunch of, you know, I don't know, in-game stuff or just a decent amount of cash back by saying $5.
If they had said like, here's $100 for the in-game store, maybe that would have done it. Because then that's enough of like $100, even though it's imaginary monopoly money that you can only use in their store. You still don't have to spend more money now to actually get something. And that is more than the value of a nice canvas bag that you would go get on your own, right? So,
and it's apology money, right?
It's apology money.
Hey, we fucked it up.
Well, and a proper apology of any sort, you know, takes some amount of sacrifice into account.
Exactly.
You know, like in this case, like when they said, like when they gave $5, right?
Yeah.
They're actually just saying we're not willing to make any meaningful sacrifice.
And actually, we're going to try to rig this apology to get more out of you, which is such a bad move.
Yeah, it's like very much a
yeah. So I mean, I think the question that I keep coming back to,
who's running the show?
I keep going back to. I'm like, who the fuck is driving this boat?
Yeah.
Because it's about to crash into the dock, and it seems like nobody is turning this thing.
Yep.
So we'll have more next week. I can't imagine that this is the end of what's happening.
They're rolling out a patch on Wednesday, I think, to like fix a whole bunch of the bugs, and a huge patch on like the 14th. I imagine with each of those will come a new saga of bugs, of horribleness. So.
Yeah. I saw an article where somebody was like, Fallout 76 has the makings of a great comeback story. I'm like, well, I mean, it has to come back. Like, yeah,
that just means it's bad.
The start of any comeback story is something is bad. Like, you know, very optimistic. But we'll see. Yeah, I think it's just overall it's a bummer just because the Fallout series has been super great especially with like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and stuff. Fallout 4 I felt like started to get weird a little bit away from the source material, but yeah, we're just in the ditch now. So
flying off the rails. It is interesting how much, if you're a big company with a beloved franchise like Diablo 3 also, right? How you can really fuck up your launch.
You do not have infinite goodwill.
No, but the thing is actually remarkably you kind of do, right? Because Diablo 3 it took them 6 months or a year or whatever, but they turned that thing around. They made a successful title out of it. And people like make fun of them still because of that, but people don't have the same kind of like vitriol they did at the beginning, right?
Right.
And with Fallout 76, Bethesda could, in principle, if they actually stop being so weird about all this and actually like fix stuff and make a product that matches their standards, they actually, I fully believe, could turn it around. But if we did that,
oh yeah, no, we'd be done.
We'd just be toast. Yeah. That would just be the end, you know? So it's kind of an interesting thought.
Too big to fail?
Yeah, they're too big to fail, really.
I mean, that's the dream.
But the only way to fail is if they just decide to continue failing.
Yeah.
You know?
Which they appear to be doing right now.
They appear to be doing. So.
We'll see.
It's crazy.
I mean, the fact is, even with their absolutely botched everything, they're going to make so much more money with Fallout 76 than we will ever make with anything that we make.
I mean, absolutely.
So,
there's interesting follow-up
it's degrees.
Here. Last piece of industry news, real quick, which is that Steam announced that they've reduced their platform cut from 30% to 20% total. But depending on some very interesting criteria, which is all about the people at the top. And so essentially what's going to happen is it works sort of like almost like a reverse graduated weighted.
It is like a regressive tax.
There you go. Yeah, the more money you make, the less tax you pay.
Yes.
Which is also, I mean, it's true.
It's very American.
It's very American. Yeah.
So basically, if your game makes over $50 million,
$10 million is the first tier.
Yeah.
If you make over $10 million, then they change the split from 70-30 to 75-25.
Right.
If you make over $50 million, they change it to 80-20.
Right.
And now, of course, like if I was making that much money, I'd be very happy for that extra, 5 or 10%. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's like $5
but
to $10
to me,
million.
The interesting thing, because they frame this as sort of like, well, at some level, like we understand that your success is actually just because of your product, not because necessarily we're pushing it and that you're buying our users or whatever. I think realistically what has happened is that there are now all these really big players who are trying to get off of Steam because of the size of the cut. That
100%. Yeah, Epic just bypassed them for Fortnite. Yeah. Bethesda didn't even use them, did they?
No.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, well, this is the problem is if you have a non-curated platform, then the cut that you're taking is you're actually not providing any value.
Yeah, you got to provide a service, right? And so I think Steam is sort of acknowledging to try to keep those those big players from
Yeah.
leaving by saying like, look, we understand that if you're this big, it's not just us that's doing that, right? But to me, this is interesting because what they should have done is a bell curve. It should have been that if you're at the bottom of this thing, like probably a little bit below where we were with Crashlands, but up to sort of like similar to that level, they should also take a reduced cut because they're actually not doing much for you either, right?
Or maybe they should just start doing something for people.
Well, no, but the thing is, but I disagree.
But
with
I don't
that.
think they can.
No, I disagree with that completely. And this is I think you hear this argument all the time in the indie circles. The problem is there's a finite amount of stuff that can be done,
and there's too many
and
games.
it cannot be equally shared. There are too many games, and so to me, like Steam not pushing a game is just them saying like, we don't think we can sell this, right? That's fine. Not necessarily their fault.
But don't
Who
take
knows?
30% of the
Don't
cut.
take 30% of the $10,000 that the person makes or whatever. Maybe take none.
Right,
you
for
know?
the first 10K of sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
Like it could be on a bell curve because it's actually the people in the middle. I think at about like where Crashlands is, and then up to some 5x that or something like that. That the reason we were successful on Steam was because Steam pushed our game. Right. That is absolutely 100% true.
As is the case with any platform that we are successful on.
Exactly. So I don't feel bad at all about Steam taking a huge cut of our revenue because we wouldn't have had any of that had they not done that.
But I'd be pretty salty about it if they didn't. Like if they didn't do anything to help,
and then just took that 30%,
just took the money
right?
anyway.
And so yeah, I thought it was really interesting because it was exactly the least developer friendly move they can make because the average developer on Steam doesn't make any money.
Yeah, correct.
And so this actually, because people were kind of touting this as like Steam's like trying to do better by developers.
Yeah, I
like,
saw
no,
that
they're
framing.
not.
I was like,
absolutely
yeah,
not.
well,
They're
and
trying to
also-
hold on to their high end clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also knowing that the people who are making under $10 million don't have the choice to bypass Steam.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have to just absorb the
So we're all
30%.
still stuck with that.
Yeah, it's
thing.
it's a move. It's a thing that happened.
Yeah, so
it's
that
I
happened.
mean, it makes sense as a business move. They want to keep the high end players around, and they want to make that more enticing. But they also don't want to lose. I assume that most of their revenue comes from the thousands and thousands of small indie games that all add
Actually,
up.
I doubt it. I think that's probably a substantial chunk, like a meaningful chunk.
Oh, when I say small, I mean the under 10 million, right?
Sure,
Which-
yeah, but they're because of how everything behaves on a power curve and the sheer amount of money that is made by those top sellers.
But they keep
It's still-
bypassing. So
but not very
that's-
many of them bypass still. Like the vast majority still are on Steam. But that has become a trend though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think Steam is probably worried that this could become a problem
Everyone
if they
starts bailing.
continue to let this trend go. Right. And as it is true because there's so many games on the platform and it's so much about curation now that to be successful on Steam, if you can't bring your own player base, then it's a crapshoot.
Right.
And if you can bring your own player base, then why would you be on Steam?
Yep.
But that's only true if you can saturate your own market.
Right.
If you are FIFA,
Mhm.
if you are Bethesda, if you're Blizzard, right? You've created your own market and you have saturated it. You cannot really get more users. by
People
being
who
on the
follow your
platform.
games follow your games. They know when the next thing
You can launch
out.
it on anything and people will go buy it. It's fine.
Yeah. You're not depending on somebody going on Steam and be like, what is this? What is this Fallout?
Right.
I've never heard of such
Right.
a thing.
And so you don't want, because it might be more convenient for people to go buy your game on Steam, but now you just lose 30% of your revenue from doing that, which means you've cannibalized your sales and just given a bunch of money to some other platform that didn't actually do anything for you except to be more convenient for some people.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably what they're trying to get away from. Probably.
I just heard that Fortnite surpassed 200 million users.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Which is probably more users than Steam
and they
has.
bypassed Google Play and they bypassed Steam.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and they only were on on App Store because they had to be.
There's no choice.
Yeah. So
Yep.
you know,
Right, because they were on Google. Were they not on Google Play? They did their
no,
own Android.
they
Okay.
they bypassed.
Yeah.
They bypassed, which I assume that we're going to start seeing similar moves from
Yeah.
Google as what Steam is doing. Of like
Yeah. They're
trying
try
to figure
do
out
some things.
because I mean, because Epic made a very public statement being like,
yeah, they
You're not worth 30%.
yeah, they were like they're going to take 30% for no reason because they're not going to give us any value for that.
Yeah.
You know? And then Google's like,
it was hilarious just how direct they were with that statement.
well, they're
got
like
a
we
kick
don't.
out
They're
of
like
that.
we don't have to play ball now. We
Yeah.
can just say what we.
There's a lot of stuff Tim Sweeney says that I don't like so much, but that one I got
He is a character.
30% is a heavy cut for like. There's got to be a pretty good value proposition.
Well,
for
it's a
that.
publisher cut, right? It's a huge cut.
Yeah.
And again, like I think for us at the level that we're operating at, when the stores do something for us, it is absolutely worth it.
I think it would make
100%
sense if
worth
they said like, while we feature your
Exactly.
game,
Yeah.
While
you
it's
take a higher
being
cut.
featured,
Yep.
here's the cut we take. Otherwise, here's what the cut is, because then it's just on its own. Those kinds of things might be an interesting model.
Yeah, I think there are a lot more sort of developer-friendly mechanisms that people could come up with, but those will make them less money probably.
Yeah.
And so they're sure as hell not going to do it unless something external forces them to. And because all current game markets are in monopolies,
Yep.
it's going to take some effort to make that happen. I think the fun thing is that we are seeing this because there are some companies that have gotten big enough and successful enough they basically get to go create their own market. But the problem is there are just other monopolies that we don't have access to.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the
'cause we
weird
can't
thing-
go publish a game on fucking Bethesda,
Yeah.
their downloader or whatever it is. You know?
But at the same time, Bethesda is competing with Steam.
Yeah.
In the sense that they are offering their game for sale through a different storefront, which happens to be their own storefront.
Yep.
But it's weird that the very products on Steam can also be its competitors if they don't play along.
Yep.
So.
Well, and also that you can compete with yourself if you're selling on your own platform. Because if you're selling on like GOG and Steam and the 1,000 other PC platforms that are all taking the same cut, that competition is meaningless to you. But if you now are also distributing on your own platform where there's a 0% cut that somebody takes.
Well, there's another interesting thing that happens with selling on your own platform, which is, for example, if you open up the Battle.net launcher, which is the Activision Blizzard game launcher, you'll notice that they don't show player reviews.
Oh yeah.
No.
They don't show like how many people liked this. Does this have a mixed score or anything like that? They just hand you the game and you
buy it or you don't.
and you have to just decide whether you like it.
Well, it's like the eShop.
Yeah. The Nintendo eShop does the same thing. There's no reviews shown. Players don't get to influence other players' purchasing decisions.
Yep.
And so nobody gets to. It works both ways, right? Like you don't get to be like, oh, a lot of people are playing this, I will play it, and you also don't get to say people hate this, right? I'm not going to buy it. You just kind of operate off.
It's basically that they don't have to solve the discoverability problem because they're only publishing a handful of things a year.
So and the new Discord store you just uses Metacritic.
Yeah.
So which does have user reviews on it, so there is that. But,
right.
All right, let's get on to questions. First question comes from. These questions come from podcast.bsketch.net. So go there and put one in there if you want it. All right. First question comes from Woland77. I remember seeing in the settings for one of your older games that you implemented controls for the Sony Xperia Play, a gaming phone that never caught on. So far, no gaming phones have really caught on. Why do you think that is?
I think
gaming phones.
So this
I think it's because you can already play games on phones.
Well, so this was the Xperia Play specifically had it was super cool.
Yeah.
It basically had like you could like slide out the bottom or the back of it, and it would sort of become shaped like a Nintendo DS almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a little, it had like a D-pad and two like touch sensitive joystick kinds of things, and then like PlayStation style buttons, and I think a couple of bumpers on the back.
It had like a pretty good controller.
So it was like a full suite, just about
cool.
of controls. Yeah. So the problem is, and this is the same kind of thing we talked about with things like VR or whatever, which is if you make a game for a bigger platform, say like an Android phones, then supporting the Xperia Play means you have to build in custom stuff into your game just for that one device.
But if no users have it.
Yeah, and this is it's a catch-22, right? So on Android, we know that nowadays there's like 15,000 different Android phones. If one of those phones has built-in controller and like 0.2% of the population has that,
then we're not supporting that.
It's generally just a bad idea to support it.
Yeah.
And because it's a bad idea to support it, no games support it, and because no games support it, there's no reason to have one.
Yeah.
So
and the only way for this to work, if you are Sony in this case, is to pay developers a lot of money to offset their development costs and their maintenance costs to, well, not necessarily do an exclusive, but just to at least support their product, right?
Yeah.
At all. Because they can advertise, they can tout, they can do all this kind of stuff, and they might even lose money on your game, right? But they do that knowing that they're creating a market for their product.
So I think the basic problem is that you don't have the major phones don't just come with a controller. Is essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And so as a result, then most of the games are going to be just built to utilize the touchscreen only, and then that's it. So I think what's really interesting is with Fortnite, because it's an FPS, right?
Yeah.
And it is on Switch. Like you can and probably should be using a controller to play it because it's just a lot easier.
Yeah.
So there's a really interesting thing I think coming up, which is that game is big enough that it's totally possible that one of the bigger
it could
phone
sell a
companies,
phone.
It could sell a phone where someone could be like, This, because I mean, Galaxy Note was doing
the
this.
Fortnite phone.
Yeah, the Galaxy Note was doing this, where they're like, "This is the phone to play Fortnite."
Oh yeah, I saw those ads. Yeah.
And then think about if they did that, and then there's like, and it slides down, and there's a controller, and
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh my god, yes!"
But it takes so
I'm gonna
long
kill
to
everyone.
make hardware
It does.
that
You
by the
can't
time
catch up.
somebody does it, that at some point, like I think Fortnite's going to do quite well for a while.
Yeah.
But it is still going to be on the steady decline at some point.
Yeah.
Once it kind of hits market peak.
Yeah, people get over it within a couple of years.
Yep. And so if you're now trying to bring a piece of hardware to market, then by the time you finally get it there to try to chase some like huge successful game, right? Then it won't be as successful as it was.
Right.
But Fortnite has opened the door for this kind of a game on mobile. And so maybe that could still work.
I think the thing cracks me up about the Switch, because I play the Switch just like in bed, play it like just sit and stand in the kitchen, just play it wherever.
Is that it's just a phone?
It's just a tablet.
Yeah.
Like it's like an iPad mini.
Yep.
But it has controllers, and that's why I play the shit out of it, because it's really enjoyable to play.
Well, and
It
I think
makes all
honestly,
the difference.
Yeah, to me, this is actually where
But also it has good games on it.
But it's because it has the controller,
Yeah,
because it allows for.
But like you can't go play Hollow Knight on a iPad.
You probably will be able to soon, but yeah, not right now.
Yeah, well, I think this is the weird problem with action game. Basically, games that would be really good with a controller coming to mobile, and of course, we're gonna have the same problem with Levelhead. Is that if you can get it on a platform that has a controller,
Then that's the better move.
then like you may get it on your phone, but you're gonna play it on that sort of like begrudgingly.
It's the last
Yeah.
resort, you know?
Yeah, because like I think there are certain games that play extremely well on a touch screen, and those tend to be more slower paced games, or games that are more like builders and those kinds of things.
Well, things where you're drawing and stuff like that.
yeah.
It's actually better in a lot of ways.
Yeah, basically things that where like a mouse would work really well, the phone also works really well. And so a game like Crash Lands, which is like click to move combat and stuff, very intuitive and easy to play on a phone. And I think it's like there are downsides to playing with a controller on Crash Lands over the touchscreen, right? And so Levelhead's going to be the opposite. And so we're still going to try to make it play extremely well on a touchscreen, but it's also going to be the case that a lot of people are just going to really, really prefer physical controls.
Yeah, it just will be better with physical control.
And so, I've talked in the past about how at least at that time, I found that it was easier for me to play it with the touchscreen, just because once you really get the muscle memory down of where the position of the buttons are, there's no button press time, right? Like you just touch the screen and it just instantly responds. But it does take some time to get to that point, right? And it's not as immediately obvious how to.
Although
how to
through
do
a
stuff.
good campaign, because of practicing the whole time, it might
That's true.
actually end up being.
So I mean,
good
we might get there, but I think that's kind of a tough.
Oh, this is an interesting problem too. Where so we have got the campaign to teach people how to play the game, right? But now we've also got cross-platform progress syncing, right? So now you go. So now let's say you're on your Switch, or you're on your PC, whatever, playing the game with a controller. You play it for like 12 fucking hours, right? So you learn how to do all the things, and then you
Pick up a
switch
different
over
device.
to your tablet, to your phone, and now you're using touch as an interface for levels that are super hard, right? That require you to already be able to do all of those skills that you so painstakingly
because the
learn.
reality is like the pickup is actually fast, because when we built the mobile controls for it, like
They're
it
gonna
just takes some time.
mirror the normal controls. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, maybe we actually just need like a little practice zone.
Or if you can just
That
go
unlocks
replay.
some
Yeah,
of
you
the
can just go
campaign
replay
levels.
older levels.
That's true, yeah, but
right?
actually something that encourages people that's a little bit more explicit, because somebody actually has to think, like if they pick up the phone, they start trying to play and they're like, oh God, this is really hard, I don't know how to do this. Most people will just stop and that's the end of it, right? But if there's a place where it's like, if there's like a little practice and it's specifically for that purpose, it's just acknowledging that
There's a transition.
there's a
happening.
transition period, that we can again pull people into. Could be actually.
This reminds me
Good.
of at some point in WoW they added target dummies to capital cities. So if you wanted to like practice doing damage to things without also risking getting killed and like trying to figure out how to play your character better, but in a low stakes environment, you just go beat on a target dummy and like measure your damage or whatever. So we need target dummy levels.
Yeah.
basically.
Basically, just go into like it actually just has the name of the skill, right? So you can just like open it up and just like try practice, which would actually be useful.
Oh, yeah.
Rocket League.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they have their
Yep.
training areas.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a bad.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea, Adam.
Thanks, man.
Think about that. All right, let's get one quick question, and then
We could
call it.
probably. I mean, we could do one or two.
Well, all right, we'll see.
We're only 5 minutes over. We'll
Yeah.
just-
All right, next question comes from Cathal, who says, "Hey, folks, do you think you'll ever take the podcast on tour? I'd love to see you here in the UK."
if we ever get big enough to have that be anything but a ludicrously expensive venture.
Yeah, if you pay us, sure.
Well, a lot though, because that's
Yeah.
also has to cover our lost development.
Yeah,
time.
I'm not saying like give us a $5
No.
Monopoly money situation.
Yeah. If you can cover a week of development time, which is very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, we went down to Uruguay and we had it was like a travel and lodging and stuff like that covered. But it was still the case that we did lose a lot of time prepping for that and also being there and doing that whole thing. We basically lost a week, and so that's we did not come out on top financially.
Oh,
for that.
nowhere close to that.
And actually, that's never.
It also slowed down development of our product or our projects by a week.
Yeah,
right.
So there is the added question of like, if you could think about it as marketing, then it would make sense.
Yeah,
but
that's why I say
not.
if our
audience
podcast was big enough that doing that kind of thing would be like, because there is some level of success at which like it's completely fine just to lose that time and money from a business perspective.
Well, this is like Vlambeer, like Rami flying around the world every 3 days.
It actually
on
can
a
become
plane.
part of your business, and then even if it doesn't directly generate revenue, it actually just is a revenue loss. If you're doing fine anyway, then it can just be a really fun, awesome thing to do. And I think at right now
we're not in that position.
We are not in that position.
Yeah. So I guess the answer is go tell 3 to 5 of your friends about the podcast, and then we'll
go tell about 10,000 of your friends.
Have them also tell
per listener. If every listener brings in 10,000 people,
we got to turn this into a pyramid scheme. Okay, so
and each one of those has to bring in 10,000 people. Yeah. Then just 2 levels deep.
We have an opportunity that's going to change your life. Okay. Oh boy, howdy. All right, next question. Challosis says, "What is your favorite video game soundtrack and or remix album?"
I mean, the only one I listen to really is Danny Baranowski. What's that game called?
Crypt of the
Necrodancer soundtrack.
I think the only one I listen to is probably the FTL soundtrack.
That one is good.
That is a good one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I listen to, depending on mood, Rocket League soundtrack, because they always have like just dope ass like sort of electronic music. Or I have a selection, a hand-picked selection of super chill ass ambient space music from EVE Online.
Nice.
Yeah, because most of their music is really eerie, but then they've got a suite of songs that are just like super chill.
I need to also listen to the original StarCraft soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I do listen to that.
Yeah, every so often he'll unplug his headphones and then it's the Terran music from StarCraft. It's sort of be like SUV here. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I feel like listening to songs from different games kind of puts you in the mood of that game. I feel like StarCraft, for me, for some reason, the Terran music always reminds me of building bases.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because they're the only ones who build bases, maybe. Because like the Zergs mutate into a building.
They turn into bases.
And the Protoss are just like, and they just like warp, open
we have
warp
one now.
Yeah.
It just took a while to get here.
But with the Terrans,
it just took longer for some reason.
Yeah. With the Terrans, whenever I'm listening to that music, I always hear SCV voices, or kind of like just, they're not in the song, but like I can feel them in my brain rattling around, because every time I play Terran, I've got like 900 SCV building 1,000 buildings, and they're just very industrious. They're always building shit, So if I'm like building a big game system, I'm like, okay,
Terran music,
it's time to SCV up, turn on my Terran music. It's good shit.
Cool.
All right. That's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server at discord.gg/bscotch and come say hello. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop over at shop.bscotch.net. Do we have Levelhead stuff coming? Is that?
Well, not now, but yeah.
We will, but not now. So if you want that, just wait. Also, if you'd like to send us something, you can find our address over at mailbox.bscotch.net. And if you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee to help support the podcast, you can do so either as a one-time thing or as a recurring supporter over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye. Bye.